Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think we have a good group here. I'm so excited to welcome you here to our Questrom Insights panel today with Ann Bailey Berman. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to Ann, but first let me just say that let me give you a little bit of background about what's going to happen today. We are recording this session, so it will be posted and the slides will be available, but you should also know it's being recorded. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce Ann. I'm Barbara Bickert. I'm Senior Associate Dean of the Graduate Programs, and I'm also a Marketing Professor here at Questrom. I'm going to introduce Ann, and then she's got a presentation, a few slides to go through that will kind of give us some background about what's going on in the marketing information area right now. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions. Ann has said she would really welcome questions at any time, so you can write your questions in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring the Q&A, and if a question comes up that's relevant, I will let Ann know, and she can try and answer it during the presentation. So don't feel like you have to hold your questions off until the end. So let me, first of all, introduce our guest today. Really excited to welcome Ann Bailey Berman to the Questrom Insights panel. Ann is the co-founder and former president and CEO of Chadwick Martin Bailey, which is a market information and consulting firm. It was listed as one of the gold top 50, so it's one of the top 50 market research firms in the country. She really began that company just after, I think, finishing her MBA at what was then Boston University School of Management, now Questrom School of Business, and built the company up into one of the top 50 market research firms of all time. She also has 2 degrees from Louisiana State, an undergraduate degree in sociology, and a master's in communication, which maybe she can talk a little bit about how those contributed to her career, because she has a pretty extensive career as a communicator as well. And she has a deep understanding of the space, which is really rapidly evolving. So I think it's a great opportunity to hear more about what's going on in just how we collect marketing information, how we use marketing information, what's happening with traditional survey research, all of that. So I'm going to now share her slides, and she will begin her presentation. Let me see if I can do this well. There we go. Okay, so I will turn it over to Ann.
Thank y'all very much. Actually, the firm was started out of BU. I had a job before that, but I started it with someone named John Martin, who was my professor at BU. And so we consider ourselves a BU firm, or did. And that was many years ago. Leveraging market information in a changing age. There's actually 2 parts to that title: leveraging market information, and then the changing age. And I would tell you that leveraging market information is what made Chadwick Martin Bailey successful from April Fool's Day, it was very poetic, 1984 to today. And that was because we learned something very quickly that was really important. The changing age is really important as well, and I'll get into that in just a moment. We actually started when I worked for a company called American Cable Systems, and at that point, I was in charge of franchising, and at that point, cable television was doing a lot of research, and I used to call it feel-good research. It was always to say that everyone loved cable television, and we were having trouble with one of our systems that happened to be in Massachusetts, or Arlington. It wasn't meeting its goals. And so John Martin and a student who was looking for a student project did research in Arlington, and it wasn't what you would call rocket science. It was basic information as American Cable was looking to figure out what was going wrong in terms of people not buying the cable at the time. And we found out that, one, there were many more older heads of households than we ever had thought at American. 2, that we had young people going in. We would send out graphics of 8.5 by 11 with 120 channels on it, which we had programming then of about 40. Then we would have a young person go into the house and say, "You're going to love cable TV." And they would go in and they turn that, they put the box in, they would turn the channel to channel 3, which you had to do at that time, and then say, "You're going to love this. See you later," and they'd walk out. So that older head of household couldn't read the type because the type was so small to get 120 channels on an 8.5 by 11. And 2, what was the first thing they did? They changed the channel the way they always did, back to 7 or 5, and they could not figure out why they couldn't connect to cable television. They were frustrated, and the word of mouth was going out. So with that information, very basic information, American changed how we sent out materials. We changed our sales staff to really be able to train people how to use the clicker, they would stay in the house longer. They would then, after they left, they would call back to make sure that everything was right. And with that, American knew that they needed real information to help them in their decisions. I left American. John and I started Chadwick, and American was our largest client until they were bought by what is now Comcast. But at that point, it told us that information has to be geared toward the decisions that needed to be made. And so we focused on it. About the science, the changing age, that's what's changing in the changing age, is we've got more data sources. You want to change the to the next slide. Can you change?
Yes, I do. I just want to also jump in and say that one of our participants, Ken Daniele, had John Martin as a research prop as well. So we're having John Martin. Okay.
Right. He was an unusual, brilliant man. He was excellent. Here you see a list, and I just picked out, I didn't do the whole list, but I picked out different types of information now that we have. And market information professionals are really good at the science in terms of learning how to use. So we still use some of the traditional types like the quantitative studies. We don't send them out in the mail and bribe people to use like we did in the 80s and 90s, but over phone and the internet. We use focus groups still, both mobile and in person. We use new things such as neuroscience applications. We use text analytics, which has really been extremely popular and extremely good in terms of doing it. We've been using more social media analytics to get things done. And then there are things on the shelf that are beginning to be used, like blockchains. Don't even ask me how it's going to be used, but it's there and on. So then we have so many different sources. We find that customers, and we were always consultants, that our customers were really doing things like improving their databases. So for example, not too many years ago, when we did research for banks, we could tell when Susie Jones, if she had a checking account. And then a little bit later, we would learn that she had a checking account, and we also found out that she had a savings account. And then several years after that, we could find out that, oh, by the way, her husband also had an account at that bank, and his savings account was lower than her savings account. So there was so banks have done, and other companies have done just a great job in terms of improving the databases that they had already started. In addition to that, we know that companies that were not collecting the data on their customers, especially consumer type customers, were also using information, and they were poet. We did a study for Bose, actually. This was a long time ago, so I can talk about it. But at that point, they were trying to figure out how to expand their market. And we did the research, and what we found out, well, first of all, why do you spend $300 on a radio, on a Bose radio, excellent radio, and when you only listen to NPR? They thought it was because of their advertising and other communication in their stores. What we found out in the study was that the main reason that people buy that $300 radio is they go to their neighbor's house and their neighbor advocates the use of that radio and speaks so highly of it that you then go out and you buy it yourself. And so with that, they began actually collecting information on who their buyers were. And then if you've bought anything recently, I bet you'll get something in the mail from them that will tell you why you actually like that device that you bought. And oh, by the way, if you want to give it to a neighbor, go right ahead. And and they did that strategy. I don't know if it's still in place, but that strategy, they totally changed the way that they looked for the marketplace. So we have so many sources of data, we have so many techniques, but now are we successful in leveraging the market information? The next slide. This is, I wish I had created it, I didn't. This is Gardner research, and I saw these at conferences about 5 or 6 years ago. And this is the Gardnerhype Cycle. And it's somewhat, sometimes people criticize it, but I think just to give you an overview, it's really important. As new sources and techniques are coming out, there tends to be this burst of enthusiasm for it. But as professionals, we use it, we learn, and then we have to adapt. And this is what that cycle shows. So you can see, you can't see my finger, but you can see the line going up as the enthusiasm goes up. And then when you begin to realize there are real problems, it drops down, and then it begins to level off as people begin to use it in a rational way. And that is something that we in the industry have to really realize if, as these new things are coming out, they are really important. We really need to learn about them, but we need to put them in perspective and use them in the right way. We need to learn also, and this is something that Chadwick, also one of our base points, is learning the power of integration. So for example, at one point, people thought big data was extremely important and was really going to take over the market information, market research world. Then they began to realize that big data can tell you the who, but it can't tell you the why and the how and what to do next. It's when you integrate big data with other information sources, that's when the power really occurs in terms of being able to leverage information in this new age. And then I would tell you that Chadwick always preaches, there's no truth in one data source. And we truly did believe that. On the next slide, here, this I saw actually in the New Yorker after they asked me to do this discussion. I couldn't help myself, but to put it in. But what you can see in it is all of the science, all of these analytics, and this can be overwhelming to managers. There is a lot of information out there, and that managers that need to make decisions can use, but they're overwhelmed, or they can't, in this case, they can't understand. And you have to remember that managers, and I'm sure there's many on the line here, have to make costly and responsible decisions. They need to be trustworthy. The information needs to be understandable. So the information is just data until it becomes insight that supports decision making. And then on to the next slide. Here you see another premise of Chadwick, and that is that the focus is on decisions. So we can see in the first side that that managers have too much data, not enough insights, that there's a lot of nice to know but relatively worthless information. And it's when the insights, when information becomes insights, that's when it becomes powerful. Recently, I read that the Harvard Business Review and Deloitte reported that 80% of new retail products are on shelves for less than 12 months. They also reported that 9 of 10 innovations failed to meet their capital investments. These are expensive initiatives, and you wonder if the managers that were putting those products on the shelf are doing those innovations, if they had the right insights to know about how to move that product forward. We've seen, through the years, we've seen market research, IT, all of those are expanding. Every company is doing something. You know, you wonder how many of you have gotten SurveyMonkey questionnaires, and then when you look at it, you wonder, what are people doing with this information? So unfortunately, managers are overwhelmed with information. They don't understand it. Neither of those help their decision making, and it's a waster of time and money. Market researchers, market information consultants need to understand the science, and we're very good at that. We need to understand the data and the techniques, but we fail if the research does not support decisions. Market information is not useful, I can't say it enough, if it does not provide insights into the decisions that have to be made in the various companies. There are many barriers to insightful information. You'll see this on the next slide. Sources have increased, each with value and bias. We know that managers themselves have bias. Sometimes they just don't believe market information. Sometimes they have their own ideas in terms of what needs to be done. Sometimes they have organizations which fails to be able to really inform them in the way that they need to be informed. Within organizations, you've got information being dealt with by different departments. IT, market research, marketing, and so on. And each of those have different perspectives and different responsibilities, and they frequently speak a different language. And so when it comes to a common problem that their manager has to deal with, he has to bring those people together. Internal managers and external consultants play similar and different roles. That's an issue. And then we know that well-grounded and insightful decisions are critical, but then a real holdback is going farther to understand what are the first and the second stage decisions. And often this does not come from the senior manager, him or herself, but it comes from the people that are working day to day on that particular problem. And last but not least, the faster and cheaper environment that so many companies are really wanting and pursuing. So then we move to the art that leads insight that into insights that are usually missing. So we see things that make up the art that we in the information industry need to be able to deal with. What are the business decisions? What is the specific data that is needed for each decision objective? There's seldom ever one point. What are the sources of data? How do you build internal and external teams, or if you're on the internal side, the internal teams, the different players that all participate with a particular product decision, marketing issue, whatever, and build communication with them? How do we learn about the issues involved with the decision? How do we get input from the teams, especially at the beginning of the process? What sources and studies are ongoing? What needs to be known? What's believed? And what needs to be initiated? If we go to the next, we need to speak that common language that managers and teams can understand and communicate throughout. We need to speak as information professionals. We need to speak the truth. We need to understand the internal bias. We need to understand their beliefs, and we need to be able to conduct our information research in a way that gives the truth. And I can't say this enough. I threw it in one more time. Integrate, 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 and then to gain input and buy. And after you do a project, you need to show the initial results to the team and to get their input and their observations after the analysis is being done. This sounds easy, but the art of market information, it takes tact, it takes questions, it takes team building, and extreme listening skills. I would tell you that 95% of my clients were extremely smart, but they weren't experienced in the information industry. And sometimes it's an organizational hazard. So you have to be able to help that senior manager understand. And frequently there's organizational issues. One study that we did related to a medical equipment manufacturer, and surgeons were yelling for a new drill. And we worked with this equipment firm looking to find a new version. And then what we found is that we had not one market, but three markets that we had to deal with. We had the surgeon market, we had the purchasing market within the hospital, and then we had the chain market for the hospital was part of a greater chain. And when we had to work with them as they brought things together, one issue was the additional cost, the other was effectiveness and efficiency within the surgery, emergency rooms, hospital operating rooms. And when we did the study with two groups, within the hospital, the purchasing and administrative people, and with the purchasing, we found that a new piece of equipment didn't need to be built. It could be manipulated a bit. But what was really needed was we needed people that could go into these hospitals and train the surgeons more, that there was a real appetite for training within the hospitals. And also that replacement, that there was a real aggravation with replacement of equipment that wasn't working to its full capacity. These were minor changes that the hospital needed to do. They saved money, and they ended up having greater input from their supplier, and also a greater amount, the equipment that they were needing to have replaced was being replaced in a much faster way. So then we go, this is a example of a Chadwick Martin Bailey business decision worksheet. And it was what we used from almost, not quite day one, to help us successfully execute projects. And what we, and I would tell you that the sheets that they use now look much nicer than the one I came up with on that. But the basics are there. You can see that across the top, you can see that there is the project objective at the very top. And then you see in the columns, the business decisions. What do clients expect to find? You see the hypothesis. What information do they need to prove or disprove their beliefs? What is the information that they need to make the decisions? What are the measures needed in this case? It was say a market research study, a questionnaire to uncover the right information. Doesn't have to be a questionnaire. What are the things they need to know? What is the data that they need? And then last but not least, what is the analysis plan? And how does that work? It should be written out, and it should be written out immediately after a project is begun, to maintain the focus of every member of the team that's working on it. In the next slide, you can see here, what purpose does it serve? First of all, it provides us with the business objectives, helping us understand what is useful, what decision support is really needed, and to ensure that the right information is collected. And we use this working with the team. So we put it together immediately after a project, if it's an RFP, to include in there. But then we use it as a model to be talking with all of those internal as well as external, to be able to discuss the hypotheses, the information objectives. It helps limit scope creep. which is something that happens in almost every market research project, by providing a rationale for cutting the nice to know questions, but not the ones that are really pertinent to the decisions that need to be made. Builds user buy-in, because the user, be it the senior manager or those on the internal team, get to help shape the study to reflect their needs and have input into it. And it keeps the Chadwick team coordinated on efforts from development through to the reporting on there. And then we learned, as in the next we learned what I'd already said. We need to use it early. From the moment the project kicks off, we start it so that it's right at the beginning, and we have our own biases that we include in there that we need to deal with. At the time of the internal kickoff, we began mapping everything from the gathered from the RCP, from the proposal process, from exploratory client meetings, which are extremely important. And then we began to move over to the measures and the analysis types that need to be done. And then I put together, not a complete, but a sample of what one of our decision worksheets, business worksheets, looks like. And this one's for product development. So the first thing that the company needed to know was, what's the best product and configuration that would help them maximize their market share, their revenue, and their profits. They want all. But then they need to know, going down another level, should it be one product or should it be 2 or 3 with different configurations because of the complexity of the marketplace? And then moving down even farther, who are the most promising targets? These are things I'm sure that are common sense to y'all. And then what are the key messages that resonate with the single product or the multiple products in the creative? And last, what is the optimum price points and what is the market share that the client can expect? And then we move over and we look at the hypothesis. Pop out, and you see that in this case, they were thinking they needed a final product that would have certain attributes, and it would be priced between $5 and $10. I made that up. And that they thought perchance that there might be 2 products that focused on the upper and the lower segments. And then they had beliefs about what segments the marketing and sales should target. And then what should be the key messages. And then you go through and you can see that in the information, what features, what price, who are the chief competitors, and what should we be able to determine from them in terms of their strengths and weaknesses? How much would a new product add to the market share or detract from the present product? From the measures, say a discrete choice, but are each of and what work can we do looking at the different price points that come up, and will they work? And then last but not least, the analysis, in which we use, in this case, a trade-off analysis with a simulator so that we can look at the different parts of the product development component and see what the simulator says would be the market share, what the pricing curves would be, who the profiles would be of those that were most interested in the product, and which was the segment that was most likely to buy in a larger group, and which one was to buy first. So, to leverage, moving on to leverage market information. I would tell you that there are 6 areas. I lost you. One is to build a process from the very beginning that works. Second, to ask questions, ask more questions, and to keep asking questions to understand what should go in it, to understand the biases, to understand not only what the senior manager is looking for, but to understand what others on the internal team can offer. To coordinate, these are people skills, to coordinate internally among the teams and the divisions, meet regularly with them, talk in a language that they can understand. Integrate new sources and techniques without forgetting the old. Make sure that what you're doing makes rational sense, that the managers can understand and trust. Understand the business decisions, the data that addresses the decisions that must be made, and be very, very explicit as you put that into your worksheets so that you make sure that you get the exact things that are needed to make those decisions. And that, last but not least, evangelize. I wish I had come up with that term, but someone in Chadwick developed it. But we need to, instead of handing off the material to the senior manager, make sure that you help make sure that those that are not in the initial meeting but have to use the data understand the information, to understand what it says, to understand what potential bias may be there, because all data has some bias. And to make sure that the understanding of the information that you have gathered can be understood by all those that need to use it. And that is all that I have.
Thank you, Anne. I apologize for the slides. I went ahead and then it was a little tricky there.
I thought it was great.
Great job. Thank you so much. Now we are opening it up to questions. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A, and we will give them to Anne to answer. I thought that was, as somebody who's taught marketing research for a long time, and I loved the worksheets that you had. I wish I'd had those when I was teaching that course, because I think it would be really helpful just to work through that process. And as somebody who listens to a lot of research reports where the information doesn't really inform the decision, I think that connection is so important. I'm wondering, here we have a question. What was your most challenging project in terms of collecting data that you can think of?
Collecting information from physicians, that they are a difficult group to gather, and that's a difficult segment to gather a diversity of insights. Plus, it's expensive for our clients on that, so you do a trade-off.
What do you see as the challenges for kind of traditional marketing information consulting firms like Chadwick going forward?
I think there's a couple. One of them is that we get caught up in the way we've done things, and we need to be open to a multitude of information sources. We need to be open to new ways of collecting information that may not be surveys and studies. Communities, for example. I think communities are very, very informative. I wish I had started this and I didn't, but I've seen the impact that it's made. I think that it's with all professionals in many ways. You have to learn to change, but you can't just jump on a change and go with it. You need to understand it, understand its bias and its very good points.
Great. We have a whole now. Every school pretty much has a Master of Science in Business Analytics. What is the role of analytics, and if you were designing a Master of Science in Business Analytics, what kinds of things would you build into that kind of a program? Was Chadwick hiring those kinds of people?
Oh yeah, we started hiring those that were really strong in analytics right from the get-go. And I'll give John Martin the credit. I actually have an undergraduate. My minor was in statistics, but I was nowhere near where John Martin was in terms of using statistics and analytics to be able to understand how the market believes and thinks, and how they act, and which is it's behavior that generally we're trying to affect. So we've always been strong on the analytics for a long time as we were growing. We taught our people how to do analytics, or a certain amount of analytics, as well as the project management. Now they are able to really set up special groups within the analytic areas. So we've always, even though we might, Chadwick uses other companies, third parties to do the data collection, we always do our own analytics there.
Okay. And in terms of training those people, what do you like to see in a good analytics person?
Oh, well, I think the problem with a lot of analytics people is they get caught up in the language of analytics. And so part of the problem with the analytics people, and this is, I don't mean to make this across the board, but one of the issues is understanding marketing issues, marketing problems, understanding how what they do can so have an impact on decision making that we have as clients. That's one reason that at Chadwick we put a team together right from the get-go with that brings together so that we have different heads, so our analytics people understand what's happening right from the beginning, and they see a business decision worksheet. They see what's going on there. They see the decisions. So it's not just data thumping, but it's actually being able to see where the data is going. Some do it very well, some not so well.
Great. Okay, so we have a question here from Roger Connor. Wonderful presentation, Anne.
Thank you.
Where does the creative factor in? Where does the creative factor in? After the plan is determined or simultaneously with it, or is the creative team integrated into the entire process?
I would say the creative team is in terms of the entire process. That's why we put a team together. And if we work it right, we actually have a team. We actually build a team between our people and the client's people, so that we can have a lot of thinking because, we want people to think. We want people to come up with new ideas, and that's good. That's good. Did that answer the question?
I thought so, but if Roger could email back if he wants clarification. Just post it in the question and answer.
I think the part of it is getting multiple minds that are different, but giving them an environment in which they can think and talk and think about each other's ideas. And that's where creativity begins.
What about the role of artificial intelligence? Have you seen that creep into what you're doing, what Chadwick is doing? And if so, in what areas? Is it in helping to design questionnaires? Is it on the analytics side? Where does AI kind of fit in?
It differs in different places. AI is extremely important. AI is one of the reasons that I think that companies have excellent databases now within our company clients. They tend not to be involved with marketing decisions themselves. Again, some of them understand. So part of it is bringing them along, spider to the fly. But they're very important. They're very important as you look to integrate different data sources, and they contribute in that way.
Okay. By the way, Roger says, yes, I love that approach. Wish more businesses were doing it. Back to the creativity question. So I just wanted to let you know that. Another question for you, as people in the audience might be looking to hire an outside firm to conduct some marketing research for them, what kinds of things would you recommend that they look for? Are there different kinds of companies that they might want to consider, different factors they might want to consider?
Well, I'll throw Chadwick Martin Bailey in right from the get-go, but that wasn't that. I think there's a number of really good market information companies, some of which really are consultants only, some of which are data collection companies really only. And so it's hard for me to point one. I think it has a lot to do with the company's market research, market information department, and how experienced they are. Sometimes those departments are really geared to translate or help translate from their internal managers. Other times they really are information specialists and they can work with data collection companies. But I would throw Chadwick Martin Bailey out there.
Okay, good. Okay, we have a question here. What about social media as a source for marketing data? Does Chadwick mind social media in any way to inform marketing strategies?
No, it's another source of information, and that has its really good points, and it also has a certain amount of bias in terms of what people are included. It's sort of in that big data component. Really good reasons to use it in terms of understanding the marketplace, but on the other hand, it has limitations, and it's when you take that social media, and I think that social media also gives you a heads up on trends, especially unmet needs, which are, people can tell you what they like, but they really can tell you what they don't like. And so a lot of times on social media, I see the unmet needs are really brought forward. So I'm not opposed to social media. And Chadwick Martin Bailey is CMB, as many people know it. Look at social media too.
Okay. So they do that kind of work as well.
Yeah, it's not a main part of their work.
Right. And let me just ask also about ethnography. Do you guys do much ethnography, and what are the trends do you see in new data? Let me just add to that question. What are the trends in new data collection technology, I guess?
Well, one of the new trends is the use of mobile phones and different mobile technology. It used to be when it started, you had to go in people's houses, and then it sort of moved forward. So I think that the trends that I've seen are really those in terms of using the mobile devices.
Okay. And the ethnography, you guys do that as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's used to really understand the consumers. How would you use that?
We tend to get hired to do strategic decisions. We also do tracking studies of various types. But I think what we're known for is when companies have major decisions they need to make, we help them really think it. We help them think it through. For different problems, and we work across a range of industries, everything from American Express to gaming, and medical devices. So we use different information sources depending upon the issue.
Okay, great. We probably have time for one more question if people want to post. I'll throw one out as well. I don't know if we have any undergraduate students in the office or even any graduate students. What are your thoughts about a career in market research? What do people need to prepare, or how could they best prepare? And what's the kind of the career trajectory? What do you see as the advantages to taking that approach?
Oh, that's a good question. I think today it's changing, just like the world's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. So I think that, and then I've only worked for one market research firm, so I'm somewhat biased on this. But I think that to show a strength in data, that you understand data, but then some people need to be strong in analytics, where another person might be operational involved and understand marketing issues stronger. But everyone in the market information world has to have some sense of statistics and numbers and how they go. But showing that you have a particular stronger suit right now is really worth it. And so you see different levels now, and it changes as company, depending upon the size of the company. In some companies you do it all, the really small companies, but as you get bigger you begin to see people specializing. So one of the paths is as a research assistant, information assistant, assistant project manager, moving up to a project manager to a consultant. Another one might be working as a research assistant, but then moving up that ladder on the analytical side. We find that there's also a division between people that like to work with clients. I was one, and one who prefers to work inside in terms of making sure the clocks work on time, and things are absolutely dead perfect straight. So the paths can change depending upon the size of the organization, what its specialties are, and then and what people are interested in.
Right. And does CMB typically hire people right out of undergrad? Do they hire people with master's degrees? What's the typical?
They do both, and I know they're hiring now.
Oh, you guys, they're hiring. Okay.
Yeah, when I asked Jim Garrity, the present CEO, for a copy of the worksheets, business worksheets, because I figured y'all didn't want my copy, then he mentioned that they're out hiring.
Okay, so we will note that and get that word out to people. Thank you. Well, I
Okay.
think that brings our seminar, our session to an end. I really want to thank Anne for taking the time to share her knowledge to all of us. It was really a great discussion and really interesting to kind of see where market research is right now and hear her wisdom. So thank you guys. Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
And if anybody has other questions and they want to let me know, I'm happy to.
You want to put your email in the chat? Would that be
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so let's see if I can do that. Oh no, that's everyone. What is your email? It's
A Bailey Berman, ABailey Berman, BERMAN @gmail.com.
okay. There you guys go. So if you have questions or want to follow up, you can reach out to Anne there. And that's it.